The country that is now settled and known as Chad used to have giant traveling peoples and tribes known as nomadic people. These people must have been written about a long time ago, but how do you group them? Do you just separate them and say, okay, there's the people of Chad, they're the dark skinned people, and we leave it at that? Or do we look back at written record and size down where do we put them? We know that Nilotic people had traded with them for at least thousands of years. Bantu people seem to have done the same, though this is not fully known. And then obviously people from West Africa. These people of Chad seem to be what some people call a crossroads between the Sahara and the Sub-Sahara. What's funny is that the 2/3 of the northern part of Chad are part of the Sahara, defeating this idea that people can't live in the Sahara. The southern parts are much more fertile and in fact have breathed a lot of life into the country. But again, if we go back in history, who were they? My estimation is that they are the Garamantes that were written down about. They fit almost completely everything about the Garamantes. They're nomadic, yet static. They have a lot of treasures and ancient civilizations that go back to that date. And then, of course, there's the writings by the Romans that say that the civilization of the Garamantes starts in Libya and goes all the way to Ethiopia, meaning it starts from North Africa and goes through that area of Chad and ends up by Ethiopia. And in fact, we remember there was that great saying or the great line in one of the ancient Roman books that said the Garamantes are no different than the Ethiopians, and who else is no different than the Ethiopians and the people of Chad? In order to answer this question, we have to go back, way back, before the Jesus, before the invasion of the Muslims, before everything else, and go way, way back to about 600 BC, 200 years before Herodotus would make his way into Egypt. Is there any proof of a civilization in Chad at this time? And is there any proof of a civilization having nomadic tendencies? Well, it turns out there is. The Sao culture dates back from 600 BC and was a partially nomadic, partially stationary civilization that had walls. It had iron, copper, bronze, and all other traits that are similar to other African kingdoms. A lot of the things that they did are so similar to other African kingdoms that it's not even funny. But one catch: they spoke an Afro-Asiatic language. They spoke the Chadic languages. It's easy to say Chadic languages, but these are West Chadic languages, which are Afro-Asiatic in nature, and these are East Chadic languages, which are Afro-Asiatic in nature. And these aren't even all of them. This is just the two that I'm going to show for now. So we go back to the Garamantes, and Tacitus tells us that the Garamantes were so organized that at one point, when they did something wrong to Rome, they sent emissaries to Rome in order to issue an apology to the Romans. And so we're not talking about a people here who are kind of loose and crazy and out of their mind. We're talking about a real civilization which has run into another great civilization, the Roman Empire. So we're talking about two people who run into each other who are great. So let's read what it says. For with a smaller army he had succeeded in taking important prisoners, in killing the enemy's commander, and in earning the credit for having brought the war to a conclusion. On his arrival, he was attended by envoys of the Garamantes, who had rarely been seen in Rome. Pause. Rarely been seen in Rome. In other words, these people are not like the other people who you could call Levantines, who they might be more rare, but they did go to Rome more often than the Garamantes. These people rarely made their way to Rome. Terrified by the death of Tacfarinas, which I think was a leader of the enemy group, Berbers, and by the consciousness of their own guilt, the Garamantes had sent them to make amends to the Roman people. So let me make sure I'm not mixing up timelines here for you. The whole Roman thing happened in AD, so that one is far away from Herodotus. But let's look at this map for 1 second. You can see here in this map where it actually sizes down everything almost beautifully, especially at that time in that Roman Empire time. So over here, you've got Egypt and, Gaetoli, you've got all these places that are, in fact, Roman, right? Then under them, you've got the Garamantes, which are outside of the Roman Empire. If you go lower, you've got the Chadic people, which I would argue the Garamantes are a Chadic people. You can see they're just above, which, by the way, the Chadic people go way up higher than where the words are. Then you go down, you got the northwestern Bantu, and then you've got the eastern Bantu, you got the Nilotic people, Kush, Aksum, the Kushite people of the Horn, the Mande in West Africa, and of course, Atlantic peoples. This is what I would call a very good map. Of course, you got the Nabateans in close to Africa, and then you've got the Parthian Empire going that way. This is I like this. I actually want to start comparing these Central African languages to each other in a deeper way than I have before. So, for example, I want to compare Arabic to the Bantu languages because they seem to have something in common with each other that even the other Afroasiatic languages don't have with each other. But the only way to do this is if I have fully established to you guys that the Afroasiatic languages are in the same region as all the other languages that I wanted to talk to you about. And of course, like I said, there's an evidence here that is so simple. It's the Afroasiatic Chadic version of the language. Right there. Chadic version of the Afroasiatic language. Not only that, they come with everything else that all the Central African, West African, Southern Central African Bantus and Nilotic people come with, which is the face masks, the cuttings, the face cuttings, the iron smelting, which by the way, that more represents Chadic and Bantu and West African early, and then later moves to the other places. But early on, these are the people who are represented by iron smelting very early. Some of the earliest dates are hypothesized to 3000 BC, which would make it very old indeed, because the Iron Age is about 1200 BC, that kind of date, the Iron Age outside of Africa. So I want to make sure that I've established that. But once I've established that to you guys, it's going to be a cakewalk to convince you that the Arabic language is related to like Bantu and thingy languages, which some people, because I did do this comparison in the beginning, But some people, they look at it like it's this radical difference because they live in an imaginary universe that TV and stuff like that has put into their head, that locations, depending how far it is, have nothing to do with each other. Languages have nothing to do with each other.